as I said at the convention, I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me, much in the fashion that Ronald Reagan once talked about when referring to the Democratic Party, that he didn't leave the party at that time had left him. And I felt the same way with the Republicans. And, you know, it's just a matter of, you look at policies and positions and the things that are important to me and the principles that I've always stood on, you know, education, ethics, the environment, the economy, immigration policy that is progressive.
You know the Florida pizza shop owner that gave the president the bear hug? You went to the same pizza shop. You got this sort of the same hug. It's sort of the same pose. And the reason I'm asking that is because it happened to the president. Many people are going to say, well, Charlie Crist is doing this, just like he did in that photograph. He's being opportunistic. It's an opportunity for him to increase his visibility. And what do you say to that?
Well, they're dead wrong.
There are people who will say that you staged that photograph, you staged the same pose and the same hug. What do you say to them?
Well, like I said, that's not true. I mean, the reason I went there wasn't to do the hug, although, you know, he felt compelled to do it, and I was grateful that he felt that way. But the reason I went there was to encourage him. Yeah. I mean, he had been getting death threats, believe it or not, for supporting our president. Yeah. And he says, Charlie, you can't imagine the kind of threats I've been getting simply by being nice and decent to the president. I said, actually, I can. It happened to me a couple of years ago when the president came to Fort Myers. And that's when I first started to see the intolerance of my former party rear its ugly head.
All right, so
and
listen.
That's just not right.
So people are going to ask, well, you're supporting President Obama. Why are you independent? When are you just going to become a Democrat?
I don't know. You know, my wife already has. So it may not be too far in the offing. But the thing that's important to me is not the politics of it, but really to support the man that I got to know over the past 4 years, even as a Republican governor, what he did to help us during the BP oil spill. He put people above politics. He didn't care. He helped us with our teachers, our firefighters, our law enforcement officers with the Recovery Act. Time and again, he's been there to help Florida. And I saw it up close and personal. He even tried to give us a bullet train, high-speed rail. But unfortunately, ideology got in the way of that, and it wasn't accepted by our current administration in Tallahassee. But the president's a good man. He's a good and decent human being. He has been a good leader for our country, and I'm honored to support him and try and help him here in the Sunshine State.
So Jeb Bush said this about your decision to run for the Senate as an independent in 2010. He organized his life around his personal ambition and ran in a primary where he was the odds-on favorite, didn't offer a compelling reason to be elected to the Senate. Marco Rubio cleaned his clock and beat him in the general, and now he's trying to find a way to get back into the political game. It is nothing to do with principles or ideas, and he goes on to talk about you. What do you say to that?
Well, he's a delightful fellow. I think what's important is I'm not going to respond to that kind of negativity. There's no place for it in our society. And that stuff is exactly what we have to get away from. You know, the people in our country want people to work together for the common good. They don't appreciate those kinds of attacks, those ad hominem personal attacks. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff you get out of the Republican Party today. And that's why it felt so good to not be there anymore. And frankly, it felt so exhilarating to be in Charlotte.
You think the extremes of the party have too much influence on the party?
Yeah, they've hijacked it. There's no question about it. I mean, the Republican Party has been hijacked by an extreme ideological point of view that is pretty intolerant, relatively unaccepting, trying to take away a lot of people's voting rights, reducing our funding of public education and helping teachers, doing the kinds of things that, you know, I just never thought were important. I was proud at the time to be from the party of Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt. But remember, Teddy Roosevelt left the party at one time too. So this is not a new thing. I mean, you know, when a party gets hijacked by an extreme ideology, those of us who feel like they're more mainstream almost have a commitment to ourselves and an obligation to our soul to do what's right and take a different path. And that's what I've done.